The Mont Blanc pen hovered 1 inch above the paper, and Song Soo-jin felt the weight of 500 lives pressing down on his hand like a blade against his throat. Rain hammered the glass walls of the 40th floor boardroom. Outside, Seattle drowned in gray. Inside, the air was suffocating. Expensive cologne, leather, and the sharp metallic tang of desperation. The clan elders sat motionless around the mahogany table. The lawyers from Viper Logistics watched him with the patient hunger of vultures circling a dying animal. 3 months. That's how long it had taken for the Hunwell syndicate to bleed out. 3 months of hemorrhaging money, of calls from soldiers who hadn't been paid, of territories going dark. The docks, the shipping lanes, the whole empire his father had built with blood and brutality. All of it slipping through his fingers like water. Soo-jin stared at the signature line. His tattooed hand, knuckles scarred, dragon scales climbing toward his wrist, gripped the pen hard enough to crack the barrel. His throat worked. Sweat gathered at his temple, despite the air conditioning. This was the moment. Sign the insolvency agreement, transfer the syndicate's assets to Viper Logistics, and walk away. His uncle Minho had spent weeks convincing him this was the only way. We save the men. We preserve the legacy. You take the exile. We survive. The pen descended, and then a silver tray crashed to the floor like a gunshot. Sir, please. The voice cut through the rain and the silence, small and shaking but impossibly certain. Please don't sign that. Soo-jin's head snapped up. A black woman stood right beside his chair, freezing as she reached for his empty water glass. Her eyes were locked on the paper inches from her hand. She wore the uniform of the Invisible, cheap black vest, white shirt, name tag that read Tracy. She looked terrified. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes were riveted to the upside-down contract on the table like she'd just read her own death sentence written in the fine print. The head lawyer reacted like she'd pulled a weapon. I explicitly told the agency to wait outside until we called for refresh. But Soo-jin raised one hand, and the room froze. He didn't speak. He just stared at her. The Dragon of Seattle, tattooed predator. The man who'd once killed a rival boss with his bare hands in this very building. And he stared at a waitress like she held the key to his survival. Tracy stepped forward. 1 step. 2. Her voice shook, but her words were surgical. Clause 88C. The routing number. That's not a bankruptcy code. The air left the room. Soo-jin's hand hovered. The pen trembled. That's a DOJ account, Tracy whispered. If you sign that, you're not declaring insolvency. You're signing a confession. The rain lashed harder against the glass. The city below kept moving, oblivious. And in that boardroom 40 stories above the world, the dragon realized he'd been holding a knife to his own throat. Welcome, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. If you've been riding with me, you know we don't do boy meets girl here. We do predator meets the one woman dangerous enough to save him. We do the kind of chemistry that's mixed with gunpowder and bad decisions. And if you're new, buckle the hell up. Because you're about to witness a collision between a waitress with nothing to lose and a mafia lord with everything to hide. This isn't just a romance. It's my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Varzone. Hit that like button before the first shot is fired. Subscribe because your obsession starts right now. And smash that notification bell because in this world, silence gets you killed. Now, let's watch a billion-dollar empire crumble. Starting with a single dropped tray. Song Soo-jin had killed his first man at 19. It wasn't something he thought about often. Not the blood, not the weight of the body, not the way his father had looked at him afterward with something between pride and sorrow. In their world, violence wasn't exceptional. It was currency. It was language. But sitting in that glass tower, surrounded by men in suits who smiled with too many teeth, Soo-jin felt something he hadn't felt since that first kill. The cold, crawling certainty that he was about to cross a line he couldn't uncross. The Hunwell syndicate had ruled Seattle's underworld for 30 years. His father, Song Dae-jung, had built it from nothing. A Korean immigrant who'd started with a single shipping container and a willingness to do what others wouldn't. By the time Soo-jin was 10, the family name meant something. By the time he was 20, it meant everything. Soo-jin wasn't supposed to take over so soon, but cancer didn't care about succession plans. His father died when Soo-jin was 26, and the syndicate's enemies smelled weakness. Sujin had spent the next 8 years proving them wrong. He'd expanded the territory, doubled the revenue, earned the tattoos that marked him as the dragon. And now, at 34, he was about to sign it all away. The financial collapse had been brutal and inexplicable. 6 months ago, the syndicate's accounts had started bleeding. Not slowly, hemorrhaging. Payments disappeared, shipments vanished. By the time Sujin's financial team traced the problem, it was too late. The liquidity was gone. The war chest was empty. 500 soldiers were going unpaid, and unpaid soldiers were dead soldiers. Minho, his uncle and consigliere, had been the one to broker the deal with Viper Logistics. "It's the only way," Minho had said, gripping Sujin's shoulder like a father. "We transfer the assets, protect the men, and you step back. Exile, but alive." Sujin had spent 3 sleepless months reviewing the documents. The lawyers assured him it was standard. The elders nodded in agreement. Everything was in order. Except now this waitress, this stranger, was telling him it wasn't. Sujin looked at her again. Really looked. She was young, mid-20s maybe. Her skin was a deep, warm brown that caught the cold, fluorescent light. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd. Unremarkable. Easy to overlook. But her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and absolutely terrified. "What's your name?" Sujin asked, his voice low and rough. "Tracy." She swallowed hard. "Tracy Smith." "And how?" Sujin said slowly. "Does a waitress know what a DOJ routing code looks like?" Tracy's jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she might run. Then she lifted her chin, and he saw something flicker in her expression. Defiance, maybe. Or desperation. "Because I used to be an accountant," she said. "Before Stanford kicked me out." The elevator doors hadn't even closed before Sujin had her pressed against the mirrored wall. One hand flat beside her head, the other holding a gun pointed at the control panel. Tracy's breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat, behind her eyes, in the tips of her fingers digging into the palms of her hands. "Breathe," Sujin said quietly, "or you'll pass out." The elevator descended in silence, broken only by the mechanical hum of cables and the ragged sound of Tracy's breathing. She could smell him. Expensive cologne cut with something sharper. Adrenaline. Anger. The scent of a predator who'd just realized he'd been caged. 40 floors. That's how long she had before the doors opened, and her life became something she couldn't take back. Tracy's mind raced. The tattooed man standing inches from her wasn't just any executive. She'd seen his face in newspapers, heard his name whispered in the kinds of places she worked. Song Soo-jin, the Dragon of Seattle, and she'd just stopped him from signing what he thought was a bankruptcy agreement. "I didn't mean to," she started. "Be quiet." His voice was low, controlled, but she heard the violence underneath it, like ice over deep water. One wrong step, and she'd fall through. The elevator shuddered. Tracy's stomach dropped with the descent. She pressed harder against the mirrored wall, trying to create distance that didn't exist. Soo-jin's eyes, dark, endless, dangerous, tracked every tiny movement she made. "You recognize the routing code," he said. Not a question. Tracy's throat was dry. "Yes." "How?" "I studied accounting. Before..." She stopped. "Before everything fell apart. Before Stanford. Before her life became a series of temporary jobs and broken dreams." "Before what?" Soo-jin tilted his head slightly. The dragon tattoo that climbed his neck shifted with the movement, scales seeming to ripple in the elevator's fluorescent light. "Before you became a waitress in a polyester vest?" Shame burned through her chest, hot and acidic. But beneath it, anger sparked. "Before people like you destroyed my life." Something flickered across Soo-jin's face. Not quite surprise, more like recognition. "Tracy Smith," he said slowly, testing the name. "Stanford. Accounting fraud. You were expelled 3 years ago for plagiarizing a thesis on international money laundering algorithms." The blood drained from Tracy's face. "I didn't plagiarize anything," she whispered. "I know." The elevator dinged. 20th floor. Halfway down. "You're the prodigy," Soo-jin continued, his gaze never leaving hers. The girl who could look at a balance sheet and see the lies buried in the numbers. The one who got too close to something she wasn't supposed to see. Tracy's hands curled into fists. How do you know about that? Because I know what that routing code means. And if you recognized it, you're not just smart. He leaned closer. His breath was warm against her cheek. You're dangerous. The elevator jolted. Sujin's free hand shot out, bracing against the wall beside her head. For one suspended moment, they were frozen. His body a breath away from hers. His face close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Please, Tracy said quietly. I just wanted to help. I saw the mistake and That mistake, Sujin interrupted, just started a war. The doors opened on the parking garage. Rain hammered against concrete. The air smelled like oil and wet asphalt. Sujin grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but with absolute certainty, and pulled her into the shadowed garage. An armored Mercedes waited in the darkness, engine running. A man in a black suit stood beside it, rain streaming off his shoulders. He looked at Tracy with the flat, empty eyes of someone who'd killed before and would again without hesitation. We have to go to the north property, Sujin said, his voice tight. It's the only location with a hardline server that holds the archives. I know it's risky, but we need those files. Kwan opened the rear door. Sujin pushed Tracy inside and slid in beside her. The door closed with the heavy thunk of bulletproof steel. The car moved before Tracy could think about running. Seattle blurred past the tinted windows. Rain sheeted down the glass, turning the city into watercolor. Streetlights bled gold into the darkness. Tracy sat rigid against the leather seat, very aware of the man beside her. Sujin had put the gun away, but that didn't make him less dangerous. If anything, the casual way he settled into the seat, one arm stretched along the back, fingers drumming a slow rhythm against the leather, made him more terrifying. Where are you taking me? Tracy asked. Somewhere safe. Safe for who? Sujin's lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. Good question. The city gave way to highway. Highway gave way to darkness and trees. The rain followed them north, relentless. Tracy watched the mile markers flash past and tried to control the panic clawing up her throat. I'm just a temp, she said finally. I was hired by the catering company this morning. I don't know anything about your business. You recognized a DOJ black budget routing code buried in a 37-page insolvency contract, Sujin said calmly. Temps don't do that. It was in a case study, at Stanford, before my organization paid your university board to destroy you. The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Tracy turned to stare at him. What? Sujin's expression didn't change. Your thesis paper on tracking illicit financial flows through shell corporations. You wrote it 3 years ago. It accidentally predicted the exact algorithm the Hanel Syndicate uses for money laundering. He paused. We paid to have you removed. The car felt too small. The air too thick. Tracy couldn't breathe. Her voice broke. You ruined my life because of a school paper? I didn't, Sujin said quietly. My uncle did. Minho handles external threats. I sign the budgets. He looked at her then. Really looked at her. And something in his eyes might have been regret. I didn't know your name. I didn't know you were a 22-year-old student with a full scholarship and a future. I just knew there was a risk that needed to be eliminated. Tracy's hands shook. She pressed them together, hard, trying to stop the trembling. My father died that year. My mother couldn't afford. She stopped, swallowed. I lost everything. I know. And now you've kidnapped me. Yes. The honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Tracy turned away, staring at the rain-dark trees rushing past. Her reflection in the window looked like a ghost. Why? If you already destroyed me, why do you need me now? Because, Sujin said, you just proved I didn't write that confession. That routing code wasn't in the original documents I reviewed. Someone added it. Someone who wanted me to sign away my freedom and my life. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You saw the trap. That makes you the only witness I have. So you're using me. I'm keeping you alive. Sujin's voice dropped lower. My uncle saw you interrupt that meeting. He knows you spotted the claws. If I'd left you in that building, you'd be dead within the hour. Tracy's stomach turned over. He'd kill me for seeing a routing code? He'd kill you for saving me. The car turned off the highway onto a narrow road that climbed into the mountains. The trees pressed close on both sides, their branches reaching overhead like skeletal fingers. No streetlights, no other cars. Just darkness and rain and the relentless forward motion of the Mercedes cutting through the night. Tracy's mind raced through options. She could try to run when they stopped. She could scream, fight, refuse. But the cold, practical part of her brain, the part that had survived 3 years of poverty and shame, whispered that Sujin was right. She'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see. In his world, that was a death sentence, unless she became valuable enough to keep alive. The money, Tracy said suddenly. The syndicate's liquidity crisis. You said someone's been bleeding the accounts. Sujin's head turned slightly. Yes. Let me see the financial records. All of them. Why? Tracy met his eyes in the darkness. Because if your uncle is setting you up, he had to hide the money somewhere. And if he hid it, I can find it. For a long moment, Sujin said nothing. Then his hand moved, not toward her, but to the panel between the seats. He pressed a button. The partition between them and Kwon slid down. Change of plans, Sujin said. Bring everything. Every file, every record, every transaction from the past year. Kwon's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Sir? She's going to audit the syndicate. The partition slid back up. Tracy's pulse hammered. She'd just volunteered to dig through the financial records of a criminal empire. She'd just made herself indispensable to a man who'd already destroyed her life once. But she'd also just given herself a chance to survive. The car climbed higher into the mountains. The rain turned to mist. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, Tracy knew, was a cabin where she'd either find the truth or lose herself completely. Sujin's hand moved to the seat beside her thigh. Not touching her, just close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin through the leather. Close enough to remind her who held the power here. If you find the money, he said quietly, you live. Tracy's breath caught. And if I run? His fingers drummed once against the leather. Then my uncle kills you. And I let him. The words should have terrified her. They did terrify her. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. A spark of the girl she'd been at Stanford. The prodigy who'd loved puzzles. Who'd chased patterns through numbers like a hunter tracking prey. She'd lost everything 3 years ago. Her scholarship, her reputation, her father, her future. Maybe, in this rain-dark car with a mafia boss who smelled like violence and expensive cologne, she could find a way to take something back. I'll find it, Tracy said. Sujin's fingers stilled. He turned to look at her, and in the darkness of the car, his eyes were unreadable. Good, he said softly. Because if you don't, we're both dead. The cabin wasn't what Tracy expected. When Sujin had said safe house, she'd imagined something crude. A shack in the woods, bare walls and cots, maybe a folding table, and a single light bulb swinging from exposed wiring. Instead, Kwon pulled the Mercedes up to a structure of glass and dark wood that seemed to grow out of the mountainside like something organic. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the forest. Rain drummed against a slate roof. Warm light glowed from inside, casting geometric shadows across the wet deck. Out, Sujin said. Tracy climbed from the car on shaking legs. The mountain air was sharp and cold, scented with pine and rain-wet earth. Mist clung to the trees. She could hear water running somewhere nearby. A stream, maybe, tumbling over rocks in the darkness. Kwon opened the trunk and retrieved 2 aluminum cases. He carried them toward the cabin without a word, his movements efficient and silent. Tracy watched him go, then looked at Sujin. Is he staying? No. Sujin started toward the cabin. Kwon has orders to return to the city. Make sure certain people think I'm dead or disappeared. You and I need to be ghosts for the next 48 hours. Alone? Tracy's voice came out higher than she intended. Sujin paused at the door and looked back at her. Rain had darkened his black hair, made it fall across his forehead in wet strands. The dragon tattoo glistened on his neck. Would you prefer I bring witnesses to watch you commit treason against my organization? I'm not committing treason, You're about to dig through confidential syndicate financial records looking for evidence that my blood relative is trying to destroy me. Sujin's expression was unreadable. In my world, that's treason. The fact that I'm ordering you to do it doesn't change what happens if anyone finds out. Tracy swallowed hard. She was so far beyond her depth she couldn't even see the surface anymore. Inside, the cabin was warm. Heated floors radiated through Tracy's worn sneakers. The interior was all clean lines and expensive minimalism. Leather furniture, a stone fireplace, a kitchen with appliances that eclipsed her entire annual salary. One wall was entirely glass, looking out into the dark forest. Kwan set the aluminum cases on a dining table made from a single massive slab of wood. Files are here. Laptop is encrypted. Password is your mother's name, backwards, with the year she died. Sujin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'll be at the secondary location. Call if you need extraction. Kwan's flat eyes flicked to Tracy once, then back to Sujin. Be careful. Always am. Kwan left without another word. The door closed with a soft click. The sound of the Mercedes faded into the rain. And then there was nothing but the drum of water on glass and the creeping realization that Tracy was alone in a remote cabin with the Dragon of Seattle. Sujin shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over a chair. His white shirt was still crisp despite everything, though Tracy noticed dark spots along one sleeve. Blood, she realized, from when he'd flipped the table in the boardroom. Are you hungry? He asked. The question was so unexpectedly normal that Tracy almost laughed. Are you serious? You haven't eaten since this morning. You won't be useful if you collapse from low blood sugar. Sujin moved to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There's food here. Kwan keeps it stocked. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. It wasn't a suggestion. Tracy found herself sitting at the massive table, while Sujin put together a plate of cold cuts, cheese, and bread. He worked with the same controlled efficiency he brought to everything else. No wasted movement, no hesitation. When he set the plate in front of her, Tracy stared at it like it might bite. Eat, Sujin said again. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat, pouring 2 glasses of water from a bottle. Then work. Tracy picked up a piece of bread and forced herself to chew. It tasted like sand. But Sujin was right. She hadn't eaten since grabbing a granola bar before her shift this morning. This morning, it felt like another lifetime. Sujin watched her in silence. The weight of his gaze made her skin feel too tight. Why are you doing this? Tracy asked finally. If your uncle is trying to destroy you, why not just kill him? Isn't that how your world works? My world, Sujin said quietly, works on proof. Minho raised me after my father died. He taught me everything I know. Half the syndicate would follow him before they'd follow me if I moved against him without evidence. He leaned back in his chair. And if I'm wrong, if there's another explanation, I'll have killed the last family I have left. Something in his voice made Tracy look up. For the first time since he'd grabbed her in the elevator, Sujin looked less like a predator and more like a man carrying weight he couldn't set down. You don't think you're wrong, Tracy said. No, but I need to be sure. His eyes met hers. That's why you're here. Tracy set down the bread. The routing code, the one in Clause 88C. It's not just suspicious. It's specific. Explain. At Stanford, we studied a case where the DOJ set up a dummy corporation to catch a defense contractor selling classified technology. They created a paper trail that looked legitimate on the surface. But if you knew what to look for, certain account numbers, specific jurisdictional flags, you could identify it as a federal operation. Tracy's hands moved as she talked, sketching invisible patterns on the table. The routing number in your contract matches that pattern exactly. It's not a bankruptcy account, it's a prosecution account. Sujin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A tightening, a coiling. If I'd signed that document, he said slowly, what would have happened? The contract would have been filed with the federal court as part of the insolvency proceedings. But because of that routing number, it would have been automatically flagged and routed to a DOJ task force. They would have interpreted it as a confession. Tracy met his eyes. According to the case study I read, they'd already built the predicate case. They just needed you to sign the admission. What case? I don't know. But based on the language in Clause 88C about international equipment transfers and end-user verification, I'd guess it's related to arms trafficking or terror financing. Sujin stood abruptly. He walked to the glass wall and stared out into the rain-dark forest. The reflection showed his face, controlled, but Tracy could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. "There was a shipment," he said finally. 8 months ago. Agricultural equipment to Eastern Europe. Minho handled it personally. Told me it was a favor for an old contact. "Agricultural equipment," Tracy repeated. "Real or a cover?" "I assumed real." Sujin's reflection looked back at her. "Now I'm not sure." Tracy stood and moved to the aluminum cases. She flipped open the latches. Inside were dozens of files, neatly organized, and a laptop. "Then we find out." For the next 6 hours, Tracy disappeared into the numbers. Sujin brought her coffee. Black, no sugar. Tracy barely tasted it. She opened file after file, cross-referencing transactions, building spreadsheets, mapping the flow of money through the syndicate's accounts like a cartographer charting unknown territory. The cabin was silent except for the rain and the soft clicking of keys. Sujin sat in a leather chair by the fireplace, ostensibly reading something on his phone, but Tracy could feel his attention on her, watching, waiting. Around 2 a.m, Tracy's eyes started to burn. She rubbed them with the heels of her hands and reached for the coffee. It was cold, but she drank it anyway. "You should rest," Sujin said. "Almost there." "You've been saying that for an hour." "Because I almost am." Tracy pulled up another spreadsheet. "There's a pattern. I can see it. I just need to..." The numbers suddenly aligned. Transaction dates, account transfers, the rhythmic flow of money out of the syndicate's primary accounts into a dozen smaller subsidiaries. And then, like a magic trick, the money disappeared. "Got you," Tracy breathed. Sujin was behind her chair instantly. "What?" Your uncle is good. Really good. He's been siphoning money for at least a year, maybe longer. Small amounts at first, disguised as operating expenses, equipment purchases, legal fees, consulting contracts." Tracy's finger traced lines on the screen. But 6 months ago, the pace accelerated. Larger transfers, more frequent. He's been liquidating assets and hiding the proceeds. "Where?" Tracy clicked through to another file. "That's the beautiful part. He didn't just steal the money. He created a shell corporation to receive it. Layers of ownership, registered in 3 different countries, designed to be untraceable. But you traced it." "I followed the metadata. File creation timestamps, IP addresses, biometric access logs." Tracy pulled up a final document. "The shell corporation is called Viper Logistics." Sujin went absolutely still. "The same company," Tracy continued, "that's offering to buy the syndicate's assets in the bankruptcy agreement. Your uncle isn't helping you survive a financial crisis. He created the crisis. He bled the accounts dry, then offered to save you by buying everything for pennies on the dollar." The silence in the cabin was total. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. When Sujin finally spoke, his voice was soft as silk and cold as a blade. "Show me the access logs." Tracy pulled them up. Every transaction was authorized using a private digital key that only one person possesses. Minho Song. "Numbers don't have loyalty," Tracy said quietly, echoing the words she'd thrown at him earlier. "They only have truth." Sujin's hand moved to the back of her chair. His knuckles brushed her shoulder, barely a touch. But Tracy felt it like an electrical current. She turned to look up at him. His face was a mask. But his eyes were burning. "He raised me," Sujin said. "After my father died, Minho was the one who taught me how to lead, how to fight, how to survive." His jaw clenched. "I trusted him. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Sujin's hand tightened on the chair. "You just proved he's been planning to destroy me for over a year. That's not betrayal. That's premeditation." He stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. "But why? What's his motive?" Tracy hesitated. "There are emails. I didn't want to open them without asking, but..." "Open them." She did. The first email was dated 3 months ago. It was from Minho to an unknown recipient, sent from an encrypted account. "The boy has gone soft. He refuses to expand into the sectors that matter. Too many rules, too much honor. His father would be ashamed. It's time for new leadership." Tracy's stomach turned. She opened the next email. The transfer agreement is in place. Once he signs, the DOJ will take him off the board permanently. The syndicate's assets will pass to Viper, and I'll liquidate everything within 6 months. $2.1 billion. Clean and untraceable. The soldiers are expendable. Sujin's hands were shaking. Tracy could see it in the reflection of the laptop screen, shaking with a rage so profound it made the air around him feel dangerous. He doesn't want control, Sujin said. He wants me gone, and the syndicate destroyed. He's selling out 500 men just to retire rich. Tracy opened another file, and her blood went cold. Sujin, there's more. Show me. It was a purchase order, dated 4 months ago. Cryogenic storage containers, industrial-grade refrigeration units, medical equipment that had no legitimate use for a shipping company. And then Tracy found the shipping manifests. Destinations all over the world. Ports in Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, South America. Oh my God, she whispered. Sujin leaned over her shoulder, reading. When he understood what he was seeing, he slammed his fist on the table so hard the laptop jumped. No, he said. No, not this. Tracy's hands trembled on the keys. The ghost ships. Your uncle isn't just selling the syndicate. He's converting your shipping fleet into organ harvesting. Sujin's voice was raw. He's turning my family's ships into floating butcher shops. The words hung in the air like poison. Tracy turned in her chair. Sujin had stepped back from the table. He stood in the middle of the cabin, rain streaming down the glass wall behind him, his hands curled into fists. The dragon on his neck looked like it was breathing. I've done terrible things, Sujin said quietly. I've hurt people, killed people. But I have rules. No children. No women who aren't in the life. No bodies. He looked at Tracy, and she saw something break behind his eyes. My uncle is planning to harvest organs from kidnapped victims and sell them to the highest bidder. He's going to do it using ships that carry my father's name. Tracy stood slowly. We can stop him. Can we? Sujin's laugh was bitter. He's been planning this for over a year. The ships are probably already equipped. The buyers are already lined up. And I'm supposed to be signing away my life in a federal trap while he disappears with billions. But you didn't sign. Tracy took a step toward him. I stopped you. And now we know the truth. Knowing the truth and stopping him are two different things. Then The sound of breaking glass came from somewhere outside. Close. Sujin's hand went to his waistband in one fluid motion. He pulled out the gun Tracy had seen in the elevator and moved to the light switch. The cabin went dark. Get away from the windows, he whispered. Tracy's heart slammed against her ribs. She dropped to a crouch behind the dining table. Through the glass wall, she could see movement in the trees, shadows. At least 3, maybe more. Sujin moved like smoke through the darkness. He reached the wall beside the door and pressed his back against it, gun raised. How did they find us? Tracy breathed. They didn't. Sujin's voice was grim. Kwan brought them here. The front door exploded inward. Kwan stepped through the shattered doorway like death itself. He was still wearing the same black suit, still had the same flat, empty eyes. But now he held a gun with a suppressor screwed onto the barrel, and it was pointed directly at the place where Tracy crouched behind the table. I'm sorry, boss, Kwan said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. But Minho pays better. Sujin moved before Tracy could scream. He came out of the darkness beside the door like a striking snake, his own gun swinging up. Kwan twisted, incredibly fast for a man his size. The 2 shots came so close together they sounded like one. The suppressor made Kwan's gun cough. Sujin's roared. Kwan staggered back. Red bloomed on his shoulder. But he didn't fall. He brought his gun back around, and Tracy saw Sujin's eyes go wide as he realized Kwan was wearing body armor under the suit. Run! Sujin shouted. Tracy bolted. She didn't think. Didn't plan. Just grabbed the laptop off the table and ran toward the back of the cabin. Behind her, she heard 2 more shots. Glass shattered. Someone hit the floor hard. The cabin's back hallway was dark. Tracy's shoulder slammed into a wall. She rebounded, kept running, found a door. Locked. She tried the next one. It opened into a bedroom. Huge bed, More glass walls, rain streaming down the windows. Tracy ran to the bathroom. It was ridiculous, stupid, a terrible place to hide. But her body was pure panic now, running on instinct. She locked the bathroom door and pressed her back against it, gasping. The laptop was still clutched against her chest. She could hear shouting from the main room. A crash, something heavy hitting wood, then footsteps, coming down the hallway. Tracy looked around frantically. The bathroom was all white tile and chrome, a massive shower with glass walls, a soaking tub, nowhere to hide, nothing to use as a weapon except. She grabbed a towel bar off the wall. The screws ripped free. It was pathetically light in her hands, but it was something. The doorknob rattled. "Tracy." Kwon's voice was muffled through the door. "Come out. Minho just wants to talk to you." "Liar," she breathed. "He said you can walk away from this. You're not part of the syndicate. You're just a waitress who saw something she shouldn't have. Give me the laptop. Walk out the front door, and you'll never see any of us again." Tracy's hands tightened on the towel bar. "And if I don't? Then I come in there, and things get messy." The door shuddered. Kwon had kicked it. The frame cracked but held. Tracy backed toward the shower. Her mind raced. The laptop held everything. The proof of Minho's betrayal. The evidence of the organ harvesting operation. If Kwon got it, Soo-jin had nothing. If Soo-jin was even still alive. The thought made her stomach drop. Another kick. The door frame splintered. One more hit and Kwon would be through. Tracy opened the laptop with shaking hands. The screen flared to life. She pulled up the file directory and started copying everything to the cloud. The upload bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness. 40%. The door exploded inward. Kwon filled the frame, gun raised. Blood soaked his shoulder, but his hand was steady. "Drop it," he said. 60%. Tracy held the laptop like a shield. "Where's Soo-jin?" "Bleeding. He put up a good fight, but..." Kwon shrugged. "I'm better. You're a traitor. I'm practical." Kwon stepped into the bathroom. "Minho offered me $20 million to make sure Soo-jin signed that document. When you interfered, he offered me $30 million to clean up the mess. That's practical. 80%. Tracy took a step back. Her heel hit the edge of the bathtub. "He'll kill you too. Once you're not useful anymore." "Maybe, but I'll be rich." Kwon raised the gun to point directly at her face. "Last chance. Give me the laptop." 95%. Tracy looked at the gun. At Kwon's empty eyes. At the blood on his suit that was Soo-jin's blood. And something inside her. Something that had been bending for 3 years, ever since Stanford destroyed her. Finally snapped. "No," she said. Kwon's finger tightened on the trigger. And then a hand reached around from behind him and grabbed the gun. Soo-jin. He was covered in blood, his white shirt more red than white. His face was a mask of controlled fury. He twisted Kwon's wrist with savage precision, and the gun clattered to the tile floor. Kwon roared and threw an elbow backward. It caught Soo-jin in the jaw and snapped his head to the side. But Soo-jin held on, both arms wrapped around Kwon's torso now, dragging him backward out of the bathroom. They hit the bedroom floor in a tangle of limbs. Tracy stood frozen in the bathroom doorway as the two men fought. It wasn't like fights in movies, choreographed and clean. It was brutal, ugly, desperate, fists and elbows and knees. The sound of bone hitting flesh. Grunts of pain and effort. Kwon was bigger, better trained. But Soo-jin fought like a man with nothing left to lose. They crashed into the nightstand. The lamp shattered. They rolled, and Soo-jin ended up on top, his hands going for Kwon's throat. Kwon bucked and twisted, throwing Soo-jin off. Both men staggered to their feet. Blood streamed from Soo-jin's nose. Kwon's face was swelling on one side. They circled each other like wolves. "You were my brother," Soo-jin said. His voice was hoarse. "Brothers are a luxury I can't afford." Kwon lunged. They went through the bedroom door and into the hallway. Tracy heard bodies slamming into walls. More glass breaking. A shout of pain that might have been Soo-jin. She looked down at the laptop. 100% uploaded. Every file, every email, every piece of evidence, backed up to a server Minho couldn't touch. Tracy set the laptop on the bathroom counter and picked up the towel bar again. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. She walked into the hallway. The fight had moved to the main room. Kwon had Sujin pressed against the glass wall, fists driving into his ribs again and again. Sujin's face was gray with pain. Blood ran from his mouth. Tracy didn't think. She ran forward and swung the towel bar at the back of Kwon's head. It connected with a dull thunk. Kwon turned, more surprised than hurt. "You stupid!" Sujin used the distraction. His hand shot out and grabbed one of the aluminum cases from the table. He swung it like a club into Kwon's temple. Kwon dropped like a stone. For a moment, the only sound was rain and ragged breathing. Sujin stood over Kwon's body, swaying. The aluminum case slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. Then Sujin's knees buckled. Tracy caught him, barely. He was heavier than he looked, all muscle and bone and dead weight. She staggered under his mass and managed to lower him to the floor instead of dropping him. Sujin, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. "Did you get the files?" "Yes, they're safe. Don't talk." "Need to." He coughed. "More blood. Need to get out. More coming." Tracy looked at Kwon's unconscious form. "How many?" "Don't know. But Kwon wouldn't come alone if Minho sent him." Sujin tried to sit up and failed. His hand went to his side, came away red. "He's bleeding the wound." Tracy's medical knowledge was limited to YouTube videos and basic first aid, but she didn't need a degree to know Sujin was hurt bad. She grabbed his hand and pressed it against his side. "Hold pressure. Don't move." She ran to the bathroom and came back with towels. When she lifted Sujin's shirt, her stomach lurched. A deep gash ran along his ribs where Kwon's knife had caught him. Not a bullet wound. Worse in some ways. Ragged edges, deep enough to see muscle. "Okay," Tracy said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Okay, I can fix this." "Liar," Sujin said. But there was something almost like a smile in his eyes. Tracy folded a towel and pressed it hard against the wound. Sujin's breath hissed between his teeth, but he didn't cry out. She grabbed his hand again and put it over the towel. "Keep pressure. I need to find supplies." The cabin's kitchen had a first aid kit under the sink. Tracy grabbed it and dumped the contents on the floor beside Sujin. Gauze, medical tape, antiseptic. Not enough. Not nearly enough. "There's a kit," Sujin said through gritted teeth. "In the bedroom closet. Black bag." Tracy ran. She found the bag right where he said. When she unzipped it, her breath caught. This wasn't a first aid kit. This was a trauma bag. Military grade. Suture needles, surgical thread, quick clot, morphine. She brought it back to Sujin. "Have you used this before?" "Not on myself." "Then I hope YouTube is accurate." Tracy had never sutured a wound before, but she'd watched videos. And more importantly, she'd spent 3 years doing jobs no one else wanted, solving problems that seemed impossible, surviving when survival shouldn't have been an option. She could do this. She cut away Sujin's shirt. In the firelight, his skin was a canvas of scars and ink. The dragon on his neck continued down his chest, scales rippling across his ribs. Other tattoos marked him. Korean characters, geometric patterns, the history of violence written on his body. Tracy tried not to think about what each mark meant. She focused on the wound. "This is going to hurt," she said. "I know." She poured antiseptic directly into the gash. Sujin's back arched. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, hard enough to bruise. But he didn't scream. Tracy waited until his breathing steadied, then reached for the suture needle. Her hands shook. She clenched them into fists, released, clenched again. When they were steady enough, she threaded the needle. "Tracy." Sujin's voice was rough. She looked at him. 3 years ago, I signed a budget authorization for external risk removal. I didn't know what it meant, didn't ask. Just signed my name and moved on to the next decision. His eyes were dark and endless. That authorization destroyed your life. Took your scholarship, your reputation, your father's last year of watching you succeed. I did that. Tracy's throat was tight. "I know. You should let me bleed." "Probably." She positioned the needle. "But then I'd never find out if you're actually sorry, or if you're just saying that because you need me alive." Something flickered across Sujin's face. Pain, maybe, or shame. Tracy pushed the needle through skin. Sujin's hand tightened on her wrist until she thought the bones might crack. But he held still, and she worked. Each stitch was a tiny act of creation. Pulling damaged pieces together, closing the wound, stopping the bleeding. Tracy's whole world narrowed to the movement of the needle, the tension of the thread, the warmth of Sujin's blood on her hands. She lost track of time. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. When she finally tied off the last suture, her hands were cramping and her eyes burned with exhaustion. "Done," she whispered. Sujin's head rolled against the floor. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. For one horrible moment, Tracy thought she'd lost him. Then his eyes opened. "Good job. Don't talk. You need rest. We need to move. They're coming." "Who's coming?" "Everyone." Sujin tried to sit up, made it halfway before his face went gray. "Minho will have heard from Kwan by now. When Kwan doesn't report in, he'll send more." Tracy grabbed his arm. "You can't move. You'll rip the stitches. If we stay here, they'll kill us both." Tracy looked at the shattered front door, at the rain-dark forest beyond, at Kwan's unconscious body in the middle of the floor. Sujin was right. They couldn't stay, but he couldn't travel either. "What do we do?" she asked. Sujin's hand moved to his pocket. He pulled out a key fob and tossed it to her. "In the garage. SUV. Black Tahoe. I can't drive you. You need a hospital. Hospital means questions. Questions mean police. Police mean Minho finds us and finishes what Kwan started." Sujin grabbed her hand. His palm was slick with blood and sweat. "I trust you, Tracy Smith. I don't know why, but I do. So drive." Tracy looked down at their joined hands. His blood was on her skin, under her fingernails, staining the sleeves of her cheap uniform. 3 years ago, this man had destroyed her life. 12 hours ago, she'd been invisible. A waitress. Nobody. Now she was the only thing standing between a mafia boss and death. She should run. Should grab the laptop and disappear into the forest. Call the police. Turn herself in. Trade information for protection. Instead, she squeezed Sujin's hand. "Okay," she said. "But you're going to tell me everything. Every detail of your organization. Every piece of dirt on Minho. Everything I need to bury him." Sujin's smile was grim. "Deal." Tracy helped him to his feet. It took both of them, his arm heavy across her shoulders, her smaller frame straining to support his weight. They staggered toward the garage like two people learning to walk. Behind them, Kwan groaned. Tracy looked back. His eyes were starting to open. "Wait," she said. She grabbed the trauma bag and pulled out the morphine. 2 syringes. She loaded one and jabbed it into Kwan's thigh. Sujin watched with something that might have been admiration. "Remind me never to underestimate you." "Too late," Tracy said. They made it to the garage. The Black Tahoe waited like salvation. Tracy helped Sujin into the passenger seat, then ran back inside for the laptop and files. When she returned, Kwan was slumped against the wall, eyes rolling. He'd be out for hours. Tracy slid behind the wheel of the Tahoe. The engine roared to life. She'd never driven anything this big before, but she didn't let herself think about that. She just put it in gear and drove. The garage door opened automatically. Rain slammed into the windshield. The narrow mountain road unwound ahead, barely visible in the darkness. Tracy's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. Beside her, Sujin's head lolled against the window. His breathing was steady but shallow. "Stay with me," Tracy said. "Not planning on going anywhere." "Where am I driving?" "South. There's a backup property 2 hours from here. Kwan doesn't know about it." Tracy pressed the accelerator. The Tahoe surged forward into the rain and darkness. Behind them, the cabin grew smaller in the rearview mirror. And somewhere in the night, Tracy knew, Minho was waking up to the news that his perfectly laid trap had failed. The war had just begun. The backup property turned out to be an apartment above a closed restaurant in a neighborhood that probably saw more police raids than health inspections. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and nobody remembered faces. Tracy parked in the alley behind the building. It was 4 a.m. The rain had finally stopped, but the streets were slick and dark. Sodium lights cast everything in sickly orange. Getting Sujin up the narrow back stairs took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. He was conscious, but barely, his weight dragging on Tracy with each step. By the time they reached the apartment door, her shoulders screamed and sweat ran down her back. Sujin leaned against the wall and punched in a code on the keypad. The lock clicked. Inside was nothing like the cabin. One room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, a bed, bare walls, a window with bars. It smelled like old takeout and dust. Tracy helped Sujin to the bed. He collapsed onto it with a groan. One arm draped across his eyes. "Home sweet home," he muttered. Tracy locked the door, checked the window, closed the blinds. Her body was running on fumes, adrenaline and fear with nothing left underneath. But she couldn't stop moving. If she stopped, she'd think. And if she thought, she'd remember the sound of gunshots and the feeling of needle pushing through skin and the weight of a dying man in her arms. "Tracy," Sujin's voice was rough. "Sit down before you fall down." "I'm fine." "You're shaking." Tracy looked at her hands. He was right. They trembled like leaves in wind. She sat on the edge of the bed. Not close to him, just close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, to hear the rasp of his breathing. "Thank you," Sujin said quietly. "For what?" "For not running. For stitching me up. For driving. For—" He stopped. "For trusting me when you have every reason not to." Tracy laughed, and it came out bitter. "I don't trust you. I just trust your uncle less." "Smart." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. The city sounds felt wrong after the quiet of the forest. "I need to check your wound," Tracy said. Sujin nodded and started to sit up. The movement made him go pale. Tracy moved closer, helping him peel off what was left of his shirt. The bandages she'd applied at the cabin were already soaked through with red. She went to the bathroom and found a towel. When she came back, Sujin had managed to lie back against the pillows. His chest rose and fell with careful, shallow breaths. Tracy carefully unwrapped the bandages. The stitches had held, but the wound was inflamed and angry. She touched the skin around it gently. Hot, possibly infected. "You need antibiotics," she said. "There's a kit, under the sink." Of course there was. Tracy wondered how many times Sujin had hidden in apartments like this, bleeding and waiting for death or recovery to decide which one claimed him first. She found the kit and came back with antibiotics and fresh gauze. "Take these, 3 times a day until they're gone." Sujin swallowed the pills dry, then watched as she rebandaged the wound. His gaze was heavy, intent. It made Tracy's skin feel too tight. "You're good at this," he said. "I'm winging it." Still. His hand moved to cover hers where it pressed gauze to his ribs. The touch was light, almost gentle, but it stopped her completely. "You're steady under pressure. Most people would have broken by now." "I broke 3 years ago," Tracy said. "There's nothing left to break." Sujin's fingers tightened on hers. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't give you back what you lost. But I need you to know. I didn't understand what that authorization meant. If I had known it was a 22-year-old girl with a sick father and everything to lose, would it have mattered?" Tracy pulled her hand free. "Would you have said no? Or would you have signed it anyway because that's what dragons do? Eliminate threats?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Tracy finished the bandaging in silence. When she was done, she stood and moved to the window. The bars cast shadow stripes across her face. "What happened to your father?" Sujin asked quietly. Tracy's hands curled into fists against the windowsill. "Cancer. He fought it for 2 years. But when I got expelled, we lost the university health insurance. We couldn't afford treatment anymore." Her voice cracked. "He died 6 months later." Behind her, she heard Sujin's sharp intake of breath. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't. That's what makes it worse." Tracy turned to face him. "You destroyed my life as casually as signing a piece of paper. You didn't even remember doing it. I was just a line item in a budget. Risk removed. Problem solved." Sujin sat up slowly, ignoring the pain it must have caused. His eyes were dark and endless. "You're right. And if you want to leave, if you want to take that laptop and trade everything to the FBI for witness protection, I won't stop you." Tracy stared at him. "You're giving me permission to destroy you? I'm giving you choice." Sujin's voice was rough. 3 years ago, I took that from you. I'm not doing it again." For a long moment, Tracy said nothing. She looked at the man on the bed, this killer, this dragon, this broken thing who'd just offered her revenge on a silver platter. She could walk out right now. Take the evidence to the authorities. Watch Soo-jin burn along with Min-ho. Get justice. But justice wouldn't bring her father back. Wouldn't restore her reputation. Wouldn't give her those 3 stolen years. And it wouldn't stop the ghost ships from harvesting organs from victims who had no choice either. "I'm not leaving," Tracy said finally. Soo-jin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or something more dangerous. "Why?" he asked. "Because your uncle is planning to turn kidnapped victims into spare parts, and I'm the only one who can prove it." Tracy moved back to the bed. "So here's the deal. I help you destroy Min-ho. I help you stop the ghost ships. And when it's over, when we've burned your organization to the ground and made sure no one else gets hurt, you turn yourself in." Soo-jin's jaw clenched. "I can't do that. Then I walk. If I go to prison, the syndicate falls apart. 500 men lose their livelihoods. Their families starve. Rival gangs move in and slaughter everyone. Then find a way to protect them that doesn't involve you staying in power," Tracy said. "Because I'm not saving a mafia boss just so he can go back to running the underworld. What do you want me to do? Become legitimate?" Soo-jin laughed bitterly. "You don't just walk away from this life. Then don't walk. Run." Tracy sat on the edge of the bed. "We have proof of Min-ho's betrayal. We have evidence of the organ harvesting. We can trade that to the FBI. You give them everything. The whole organization. Every dirty secret. And in exchange, they give you immunity and witness protection. You want me to become a rat. I want you to become human." Soo-jin stared at her like she'd suggested he cut off his own arm. "Think about it," Tracy pressed. "Min-ho's already sold you out. He's planning to disappear with billions while you rot in a federal prison. The syndicate is already dead. You just don't know it yet. But if you control how it falls, if you're the one who tears it down from the inside, you can save the soldiers. Get them deals. Immunity for cooperation. New identities. They'd never forgive me. They'd be alive to hate you. That's more than Min-ho's planning to leave them." Soo-jin was quiet for a long time. Tracy could see him thinking, calculating odds and outcomes. Finally, he looked at her. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I lose everything. My name, my power, my identity. You keep your life. And your soul. You think I still have one of those?" Tracy met his eyes. "I think if you didn't, you wouldn't have stopped me from running." Something in Soo-jin's expression cracked. He reached out and took her hand again. This time, she didn't pull away. "I need time," he said. "To think. To plan. We can't just walk into the FBI tomorrow and hand over the syndicate. Min-ho has to be dealt with first." "How?" The ships. If we can stop them from launching, if we can destroy the whole organ operation before it starts, Min-ho loses his billion-dollar payday. He'll be vulnerable, desperate. That's when we move." Tracy's mind was already racing ahead. The files showed the first ship is scheduled to depart from a private dock in Vancouver in 3 days. "If we can get there, we can sabotage it," Soo-jin finished. "Destroy the equipment. Free any victims he's already acquired." "That's insane. We don't have resources. We don't have people we can trust. It's just us." Soo-jin's smile was sharp and dark. "Then we'd better be enough." Tracy should have been terrified. Should have walked away. Should have grabbed that laptop and run as far and fast as she could. Instead, she felt alive for the first time in 3 years. "Okay," she said. "We stop the ships, then we burn everything down." Soo-jin's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. The touch was hypnotic, dangerous. "Why are you really doing this, Tracy? It's not just about justice." "No," she admitted. "It's about making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Your uncle is about to create an industry of nightmares. Someone has to stop him. And if we fail, then we die. But at least we die trying to do something that matters." Soo-jin pulled her closer. Not forcefully, just a gentle pressure that she could have resisted but didn't. She found herself sitting beside him on the bed, their shoulders touching, their hands still intertwined. "You're extraordinary," he said quietly. Do you know that? Tracy's breath caught. I'm a waitress with a laptop. You're a survivor who sees patterns no one else notices. You're brave enough to call out a mafia boss in a room full of killers. You're smart enough to trace money through shell corporations in 6 hours. You're steady enough to stitch up a man who destroyed your life. Sujin's hand moved to her face, fingers light against her jaw. You're extraordinary, and I'm sorry I didn't see it 3 years ago. The apartment felt too small, the air too thick. Tracy could feel the heat of Sujin's body, smell the copper tang of blood mixed with his cologne. His eyes were dark and dangerous and full of things she shouldn't want. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Don't look at me like that, like I'm something worth saving. You are. You don't know me. I know enough. His thumb traced her jawline. I know you're fierce and brilliant and too stubborn to break. I know you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I know you're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen more than the dragon. Tracy's heart was hammering. She should move, should pull away, should remember that this man had ruined her life, that he was a killer, that nothing good could come from the electric current running between them. But she didn't move. This is a bad idea, she said. The worst, Sujin agreed. His hand slid into her hair. But I stopped making good decisions the moment I let you speak in that boardroom. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't soft. It was 3 years of rage and pain and desperate survival meeting in the space between their mouths. Tracy's hands fisted in what was left of his shirt, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed that this was wrong. Sujin tasted like blood and violence, and something darker she didn't want to name. His hand tangled in her hair, the other pressing against her lower back. Every place they touched felt like fire. Tracy broke the kiss, gasping. We can't do this. I know. You're injured. I know. I hate you. I know that too. Sujin's forehead rested against hers. His breathing was ragged. But you're here anyway. Tracy closed her eyes. She could feel his heartbeat against her palms, fast and hard and real. This doesn't change anything. We stop your uncle. We burn the syndicate. You turn yourself in. Agreed. And after that, we're done. You go your way. I go mine. If that's what you want. Tracy pulled back enough to look at him. His eyes were still dark, still dangerous. But now there was something else there. Something vulnerable and raw that made her chest ache. It's not about what I want, she said. It's about what's right. Sujin's smile was sad. Then I guess I'll have to settle for these 3 days. He kissed her again, softer this time. And Tracy let him, because in 3 days they'd be dead or free. And right now she needed to feel something other than fear. When they finally broke apart, Sujin was pale and breathing hard. The exertion had reopened something in his wound. Tracy saw fresh blood seeping through the bandage. Lie down, she ordered. Bossy, you're bleeding again. Sujin let her push him back against the pillows. Tracy grabbed the first aid kit and started rewrapping the wound. Her hands were steadier now, her movements clinical. Get some sleep, she said. We have 3 days to plan an impossible mission. You'll need your strength. What about you? I'll keep watch. Tracy. Sleep, Sujin. He caught her wrist one more time. If this goes wrong, if we don't make it, I want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. For Stanford. For your father. For dragging you into this war. Tracy's throat was tight. Apology noted. And I want you to know. He stopped. Started again. You're the first good thing I've done in 8 years. Tracy didn't know what to say to that. So she said nothing, just squeezed his hand once and turned away. She spent the rest of the night sitting by the window, laptop open, planning how to destroy a ghost fleet and take down a mafia empire with nothing but rage and determination. Outside, the city woke slowly. Garbage trucks rumbled past. Streetlights flickered off. The sun rose behind thick clouds, turning the world gray and cold. And Tracy Smith, the girl who'd lost everything, began to build a plan that would either save lives or end hers. Tracy wasn't sure when she fell asleep. One moment she was staring at shipping manifests on the laptop screen, and the next she was jerking awake to the sound of Sujin's phone buzzing on the nightstand. Gray morning light filtered through the barred windows. Her neck ached from sleeping in the chair. The laptop had gone dark in her lap. Sujin's phone buzzed again. He was still asleep, his breathing deep and even. The color had returned to his face. Whatever infection had been threatening seemed to have backed off under the weight of antibiotics and sheer stubbornness. Tracy grabbed the phone before it could wake him. The screen showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a text message. "We need to talk. Name your location." Minho. Tracy's blood went cold. She glanced at Sujin. Still sleeping. She stood quietly and carried the phone to the bathroom, closing the door before she did anything stupid. She stared at the message. Minho thought he was texting Sujin, which meant Kwon hadn't reported in yet, which meant Minho didn't know his nephew was alive, bleeding, and hiding in a safe house with the woman who'd discovered his entire plot. This was an opportunity. Tracy's fingers moved before her brain could catch up. She typed, "Can't talk. Injured. Need 24 hours. The response came within seconds. "How bad?" Kwon got sloppy. "I'm handling it." A pause. Then, "And the girl?" Tracy's jaw clenched. "Dead." Another pause. This one longer. She could almost feel Minho calculating on the other end, weighing whether to believe it. "Good. The Vancouver buyer is demanding the Dragon's personal seal on the cargo. I need you there to authorize the release, or the deal dies. Can you manage?" "Yes. Don't disappoint me, nephew. We're too close to let one waitress destroy everything." Tracy wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, she took a breath and typed, "Understood." She deleted the conversation, turned off the phone, and went back to the main room. Sujin's eyes were open. He watched her from the bed with an expression she couldn't read. "Who was it?" he asked. "Your uncle. He thinks I'm dead." Sujin sat up slowly, wincing. "What did you tell him?" "That you're injured but alive. That you need 24 hours. And that you'll be visible in time for the Vancouver shipment." Tracy crossed her arms. "He bought it." "Did he say anything about Kwon?" "No. Which means either Kwon's dead, or he's too ashamed to report that he failed to kill us." Sujin rubbed his face. "Kwon's not dead. I hit him hard, but not that hard. Which means he's hiding. Probably trying to figure out how to explain to Minho that he lost. So we have a window," Tracy said. "Maybe 48 hours before Minho realizes something's wrong. We need to use it." "Agreed." Sujin swung his legs off the bed and stood. The movement made him pale, but he stayed upright. "We need to get to Vancouver. Scout the dock. Figure out what we're dealing with. You can barely stand. I've fought with worse." "That's not comforting." Sujin smiled grimly. "It's not supposed to be." He moved to the kitchenette and started pulling things from cupboards. Protein bars, bottled water, a first aid kit. "We need supplies, money, weapons." "I can get money," Tracy said. "I still have access to the cloud backups. If I can find one of Minho's offshore accounts, you'd have to crack security you built." "I built it. I know where the weaknesses are." Sujin looked at her with something like admiration. "You're suggesting we rob my uncle to fund the operation to destroy him? Poetic, isn't it?" "It's perfect." Sujin tossed her a protein bar. "Eat, then show me what you've got." For the next 2 hours, Tracy walked Sujin through everything she'd found in the syndicate files. The shell corporations, the ghost ships, the Vancouver dock that Minho had leased under a fake company name. The buyers lined up across 3 continents, all waiting for their shipments of stolen organs. Sujin listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "How many victims?" he asked finally. Tracy pulled up a spreadsheet. "Based on the cryogenic capacity of the first ship, they're equipped to handle 40 bodies at a time. But the files reference renewable inventory. I think..." She stopped, swallowed. "I think he's planning to kidnap people continuously. This isn't one shipment. It's an ongoing operation." Sujin's hands curled into fists. "He's building a factory." "Yes. And the buyers. Who are they?" "Private hospitals in countries with lax transplant laws. Billionaires willing to pay premium for organs without the waitlist. Some military contracts that I don't understand." Tracy's voice shook. "Sujin, this is bigger than we thought. If we don't stop the first ship, he'll just send another. We need to destroy the whole network. Then we destroy the network." Sujin moved to stand behind her, looking over her shoulder at the laptop screen. His presence was warm and solid. Can you get into his accounts? Give me an hour. You have 30 minutes. We need to move before anyone traces our location. Tracy's fingers flew across the keyboard. She knew Minho's security because she'd studied systems just like it at Stanford. Backdoor passwords, admin overrides, the kind of vulnerabilities that only existed because the people building the systems never imagined someone with her specific skill set would be trying to break in. 28 minutes later, she was in. Holy shit, she breathed. Sujin leaned closer. What? Your uncle has 43 offshore accounts across 7 countries. Total liquid assets. Tracy's voice cracked. $2.1 billion. The silence in the apartment was absolute. That's not just syndicate money, Sujin said finally. That's everything. Every asset my father built. Every dollar we've earned in 30 years. He's been stealing it all. And he was going to let you take the fall for his crimes while he disappeared with all of it. Tracy looked up at him. How much do you need? For what? For everything. Bribes, transportation, weapons, whatever we need to stop him. Sujin's smile was dark. Take $1 million. It'll piss him off, and we'll have more than enough. Tracy created a transfer to an account Sujin provided. $1 million, pulled from the same shell corporations Minho had used to hide his theft. It would take him hours to notice, maybe days. By then, they'd be gone. Done, Tracy said. Sujin's hand rested on her shoulder. You're terrifying. You know that? I've been told. Good. We're going to need terrifying. He moved away, started pulling supplies together. Get cleaned up. We leave in 20 minutes. Tracy looked down at herself. She was still wearing the same uniform from yesterday. Black polyester vest over a white button-down, both now stained with blood and dirt. Her hair was a disaster. She probably smelled like fear and exhaustion. She grabbed a change of clothes from a bag Sujin provided. Black jeans, a dark sweater, boots that actually fit. The bathroom was tiny, but the shower was hot. Tracy stood under the spray and let the water wash away blood and sweat and the feeling of Kwan's hands on her throat. When she came out, Sujin was dressed in dark tactical gear. He looked like a different person. No longer the executive in the expensive suit, but something harder. Dangerous. The dragon fully awake. He'd laid out weapons on the bed. 2 handguns, knives, a tactical vest. Do you know how to use these? He asked. I've never even held a gun. Then you're about to learn. Sujin picked up one of the handguns and checked the chamber. This is a Glock 19. 15 rounds. Simple, reliable, point and shoot. He moved through the basics. Safety, how to hold it, how to aim. Tracy's hands shook the first time she held the weapon. It was heavier than she expected, cold and deadly. I can't do this, she said. Yes, you can. Sujin's hands covered hers, adjusting her grip. The first rule, don't pull the trigger unless you're ready to kill. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. You understand? Tracy nodded. The second rule, if you do pull the trigger, don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. His breath was warm against her ear. Can you do that? If it comes down to you or someone else, can you pull the trigger? Tracy thought about her father, about the victims waiting to be harvested, about Kwan's empty eyes when he'd aimed his gun at her face. Yes, she said. Good. They loaded the weapons into a duffel bag, along with the laptop, the files, and the first aid kit. Sujin strapped on the tactical vest and hid it under a jacket. Tracy put her gun in the waistband of her jeans, hidden by the sweater. Sujin reached under a loose floorboard beneath the bed and pulled out a waterproof pouch. Passports, he said, tossing them to her. Emergency identities I stashed here years ago. We'll need them for the border. Ready? Sujin asked. No, that's the right answer. He opened the apartment door and checked the hallway. Clear. Stay close to me. If anything happens, anything, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help. Just run. I'm not leaving you. Sujin turned to look at her. Something moved in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. You barely know me. I know enough. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he pulled her close and kissed her hard. It was desperate and fierce, a promise and a goodbye all at once. When he pulled back, His voice was rough. "If we survive this, remind me to ask you out properly." Tracy's laugh was shaky. "If we survive this, I'm checking us both into therapy." "Deal." They made it to the Tahoe without incident. Soo-jin drove this time, his hands steady on the wheel despite the wound in his side. They headed north toward the Canadian border, toward Vancouver and the dock where Minho's first ghost ship waited. The city fell away behind them. Suburbs gave way to forest. Rain started again, a soft drizzle that made the world look watercolor and vague. Tracy pulled out the laptop and started going through the Vancouver dock's layout. Security cameras, guard rotations, entry points. She built a mental map of the location, looking for weaknesses. "There," she said, pointing to a service entrance on the south side. "It's camera blind for 30 seconds every rotation. If we time it right, we can get in without being seen. And once we're inside, we find the ship, plant explosives, get out before anyone knows we were there." You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's the best shot we have. Soo-jin's hands tightened on the wheel. "Tracy, if this goes wrong, if we get caught, they won't just kill us. They'll make it slow, painful. You need to be prepared for that." "I know. Do you? Because there's still time to back out. I can drop you at the border, give you enough money to disappear. You could start over somewhere safe." Tracy looked at him, really looked. Saw the tension in his jaw, the way his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He was giving her an out. Even now, bleeding and hunted, he was trying to protect her. "I'm not backing out," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because someone has to stop your uncle. And apparently, we're the only ones stupid enough to try." Soo-jin's laugh was rough. "Stupid or brave? I'm still not sure which. Maybe both." They drove in silence for a while. The rain picked up. The wipers beat a steady rhythm against the windshield. "My father used to say that honor in our world was a luxury most men couldn't afford," Soo-jin said finally. "He said survival meant doing whatever necessary, no matter how dirty. I believed him for a long time. What changed?" "You." Soo-jin glanced at her. "You're risking everything to save people you'll never meet. There's no profit in it. No advantage. Just..." He stopped. "Just the right thing to do. I'd forgotten that was possible." Tracy's throat was tight. "Don't make me a saint. I'm doing this because I'm angry, because I want your uncle to pay for what he did to me and what he's planning to do to others. That's not noble. That's revenge. Revenge that saves lives," Soo-jin countered. "I'll take it." The border crossing was easier than Tracy expected. Soo-jin had fake passports for both of them, good enough to pass a cursory check. They crossed into Canada as Michael Park and Emily Cole, married couple on a weekend trip to Vancouver. The city appeared through the rain like a vision. Glass towers, green mountains, the harbor spread out beneath bridges and clouds, beautiful and deadly. Soo-jin drove them to a hotel near the waterfront. Nothing fancy, but clean and anonymous. They checked in, dumped their bags, and immediately started planning. The dock was an hour south of the city, nestled in an industrial area that the tourism board pretended didn't exist. Tracy pulled up satellite images on the laptop, while Soo-jin cleaned and loaded weapons. "The ship is called the Pacific Dawn," Tracy said. "Registered in Liberia. Crew of 12, but half of them are probably Minho's people. It's scheduled to depart in..." She checked her watch. 53 hours. "So we go tonight." "Tonight?" Tracy's voice cracked. "We just got here. We haven't even scouted the location. We don't have time to scout. Every hour we wait is another hour. Minho has to realize something's wrong." Soo-jin set down the gun he'd been cleaning. "We go in tonight. We destroy the ship. We get out. And if there are already victims on board..." Soo-jin's face went hard. "Then we free them first." Tracy nodded. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline and purpose and the electric certainty that they were about to do something impossible. "Okay," she said. "Tonight." The dock smelled like diesel and rotting fish. Tracy crouched beside Soo-jin in the shadows between two shipping containers, rain soaking through her clothes. It was 1 a.m. The industrial complex was mostly dark. Just a few security lights casting yellow pools across wet concrete. The Pacific Dawn sat at the far pier, massive and dark. Lights glowed behind portholes. Tracy could see movement on deck. Guards, maybe, or crew preparing for departure. "See the cameras?" Sujin whispered. Tracy followed his pointing finger. 3 cameras covered the approach to the pier. "Yes. They rotate on a 30-second cycle. When the middle camera swings away from the gate, we have 20 seconds to get through." 20 seconds? Great. That's plenty of time. Tracy's voice dripped sarcasm. Sujin's hand found hers in the darkness. He squeezed once. "Stay close. Move fast. Don't think. Don't think. Got it. Super helpful." Despite everything, Sujin smiled. They waited. The rain covered the sound of their breathing, the hammering of Tracy's heart. She counted seconds in her head, matching the rhythm of the camera rotation. Sujin's hand tightened on hers. Now. They ran. 20 seconds to cross 50 yards of open ground. Tracy's boots slapped wet concrete. The duffel bag with the explosives bounced against Sujin's back. The fence loomed ahead. Chain link with barbed wire at the top. Sujin hit it first and started climbing. Tracy was right behind him, her hands finding holds, pulling herself up. The barbed wire at the top caught her jacket. She tore free, felt the fabric rip, kept moving. They dropped on the other side just as the camera swung back. Tracy pressed against the fence, gasping. Sujin pulled her into the shadows between 2 buildings. "You okay?" He breathed. "Fine. Great. Love breaking and entering." "You're doing great." They moved toward the pier. The Pacific Dawn was even bigger up close. A cargo ship converted for darker purposes. Tracy could see the modifications. Extra refrigeration units bolted to the deck, reinforced doors on the cargo holds. This wasn't a ship for transporting goods. It was a mobile prison. Sujin led them to a service ladder on the pier. They climbed up to the level of the deck. 2 guards stood at the gangway, smoking and talking in low voices. "Can you get past them?" Tracy whispered. Sujin pulled a knife from his belt. "Stay here." "Wait." But he was already moving, silent as smoke. Tracy watched him cross the deck, staying low, using containers for cover. He moved like violence had a shape, and he was it. One of the guards turned. Sujin was on him before he could shout, hand over his mouth, knife to his throat. A quick struggle. The guard went limp. The second guard reached for his radio. Sujin threw the knife. It caught the guard in the shoulder. He went down hard. Sujin waved Tracy forward. She ran across the gangway, her heart in her throat. Up close, the guards were young, barely older than her. Sujin had tied and gagged them, left them breathing. "Cargo hold," Sujin said, pointing to a door. "That's where they'd keep victims." Tracy followed him down a narrow corridor. The ship creaked and groaned around them. Water sloshed against the hull. Everything smelled like metal and fear. The cargo hold door was locked. Sujin pulled out a small device and attached it to the electronic lock. Seconds later, it beeped. The lock clicked open. Tracy's breath caught. Inside were cages, 20 of them, lined up in rows, and in those cages, people, women, mostly. Some men. All of them thin, terrified, dirty. They stared at Tracy and Sujin with eyes that had given up hope. "Oh my God," Tracy breathed. Sujin was already moving, pulling bolt cutters from the duffel. "Get them out. I'll set the charges." Tracy ran to the first cage. A young woman stared at her through the bars. She couldn't have been more than 17. "It's okay," Tracy said, her voice shaking. "We're getting you out." The woman didn't respond. Shock, maybe, or disbelief that rescue was real. Tracy cut the lock. The cage door swung open. "Can you walk?" The woman nodded slowly. "Then help me free the others." For the next 10 minutes, Tracy and the freed victims worked to open every cage. Sujin moved through the hold, placing charges on key structural points. Small, precise explosives that would gut the ship without causing casualties in the area. "How many?" Sujin asked. 38, Tracy said. Her voice was numb. He was going to harvest 38 people. Sujin's face was carved from stone. Not anymore. They led the victims up to the deck. Most could barely walk. They'd been starved, beaten, kept in darkness. Tracy's rage burned hot enough to char bone. We need transport, she said to Sujin. There's a crew transport bus in the lot, used for shuttling dock workers. Keys should be in the guard shack. Tracy ran. She found the keys right where Sujin said. The bus was old but functional. She drove it to the pier, and together she and Sujin loaded the victims inside. 38 people who should have died but wouldn't. 38 lives saved. Go, Sujin told her. Get them to the hospital. Tell them they were trafficked. Give fake names. Don't mention me. What about you? I need to make sure this ship never sails. Tracy grabbed his jacket. You set the charges. Let's go. Not yet. Sujin pulled something from his pocket. A phone. I need to make a call first. To who? My uncle. Tracy's blood went cold. What? Why? Because I want him to know who destroyed his operation. Sujin's smile was sharp as broken glass. I want him to know I'm alive. And I want him to know he's already lost. That's insane. He'll send everyone. Let him. Sujin cupped her face in his hands. Get those people to safety, Tracy. That's what matters. You matter. No, he said softly. I don't. But you do. And they do. So drive. He kissed her once, hard and desperate. Then he pushed her toward the bus. Tracy's hands shook on the steering wheel. She looked back once. Sujin stood on the deck of the Pacific Dawn, phone to his ear, looking like a king surveying his kingdom one last time before burning it to ash. She drove. Behind her, she heard the explosion. The hospital was chaos. Tracy pulled up to the emergency entrance and started pulling victims out of the bus. Medical staff swarmed, asking questions she couldn't answer, taking people on gurneys, calling for trauma teams. A police officer grabbed Tracy's arm. What happened? Where did these people come from? Trafficking, Tracy said. The word felt like glass in her mouth. A ship at the industrial docks. They were going to be... She stopped. They need help, please. And you are? Nobody. Tracy pulled free. I'm nobody. She ran. Back to the bus. Back toward the docks. She had to find Sujin. Had to make sure he'd gotten off the ship before. The second explosion lit up the night sky. Tracy slammed on the brakes. Through the rain, she could see flames. The Pacific Dawn was burning, sinking, dying. Black smoke billowed into the clouds. No, Tracy breathed. No, no, no. She drove faster. The industrial complex was swarming with emergency vehicles by the time she arrived. Fire trucks, police, ambulances. Tracy parked the bus a block away and approached on foot. You can't go in there, a firefighter told her. My brother was working on that ship. Please, I need to know if he got out. The firefighter's face was grim. We haven't found anyone yet. The ship went down fast. Tracy's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the wet pavement and stared at the flames. He was dead. Sujin was dead. She'd driven away and he'd blown up the ship with himself on it because that's what dragons did. They burned their kingdoms down rather than let them be taken. Ma'am? The firefighter crouched beside her. Are you injured? No. Tracy's voice sounded far away. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She'd never be fine again. A hand touched her shoulder. Tracy looked up. Sujin stood there, soaking wet, covered in soot and blood, but alive. You dramatic asshole, Tracy breathed. I didn't jump, he said, grimacing as he held his side. I dropped one of the emergency lifeboats off the stern before the blast, drifter in until I hit the pier. Tracy launched herself at him. She didn't care that they were in public, didn't care about the firefighters staring, didn't care about anything except the solid warmth of his body and the steady beat of his heart. I thought you were dead, she said against his chest. Not yet. Sujin's arms tightened around her. But we need to move. My uncle knows I'm alive. He'll send people. Let him. I'm done running. Tracy. No. She pulled back to look at him. We saved 38 people tonight. We destroyed his ship. We cost him billions. Now we finish it. Sujin stared at her. Then he started laughing. It was a rough, disbelieving sound. You're insane. I'm inspired. Tracy grabbed his hand. You said your uncle wanted you visible for the Vancouver shipment. Well, you're visible. And you're pissed. What's the one thing that would make him desperate enough to make a mistake? Understanding dawned in Sujin's eyes. If he thinks I'm coming for him directly. Exactly. We make him think you're planning a full assault on syndicate headquarters. He'll pull everyone in to defend. And while he's looking at you, you upload the kill switch, Sujin finished. The same thing you did at the cabin. Destroy his whole network from the inside. But this time, we don't run afterward. We walk into the FBI with every piece of evidence we have. We hand them your uncle, the syndicate, and the entire trafficking operation. They'll arrest me too. Only if you don't cut a deal first. Tracy's mind was racing. You give them everything. Names, locations, bank accounts. In exchange, they give you immunity and witness protection. Your soldiers get the same deal if they cooperate. Everyone gets a second chance except Minho. Sujin was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Okay? Let's burn it all down. They spent the next 12 hours planning. Back at the hotel, Tracy built the kill switch while Sujin made calls. He reached out to soldiers he trusted. Men who'd served under his father, who remembered when the syndicate had codes and honor. He offered them a choice. Stay and die with Minho, or flip and live. Most chose to flip. By midnight, they had 20 men ready to testify. By dawn, Tracy's kill switch was complete. A virus that would corrupt every database, erase every financial record, destroy the entire digital infrastructure of the Hanul Syndicate. It's ready, Tracy said. Sujin looked at the laptop screen, looked at her. Once you run that, there's no going back. I know. The syndicate my father built. Everything he worked for. It'll be gone. Your father built a criminal empire, Tracy said gently. Maybe it's time to build something better. Sujin nodded slowly. Then he pulled out his phone and made one more call. Uncle, he said when Minho answered. We need to talk. The Hanul Syndicate headquarters was a glass tower in downtown Seattle. 40 stories of legitimate business built on foundations of blood. Tracy and Sujin walked through the lobby at noon, surrounded by 20 former soldiers who'd chosen redemption over loyalty. They took the elevator to the top floor where Minho's office waited. The elevator was silent. Tracy's hand was on the gun in her jacket. Sujin's face was carved from stone. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes, I do. The doors opened. Minho's office took up the entire 40th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread out below. Rain lashed the glass. The man himself sat behind a desk made from a single piece of marble, and he was smiling. Nephew, Minho said. I knew you'd come. Guards filled the room. At least 30 of them, all armed, all loyal to Minho. Tracy's 20 soldiers suddenly seemed very few. Let them go, Sujin said. His voice was calm. This is between us. Is it? Minho stood. He was older than Sujin, his hair silver, but he moved with the same predatory grace. Because it seems to me this is about a waitress who couldn't mind her own business. His eyes landed on Tracy, cold, empty, killer's eyes. You're supposed to be dead, Minho said. I'm hard to kill, Tracy replied. We'll see. Minho nodded to his guards. They raised their weapons. Wait. Sujin stepped forward. I have a deal for you. I'm listening. Let Tracy and my men walk out of here. You and I settle this. One-on-one. If I win, the syndicate is mine. If you win? Sujin shrugged. You were going to kill me anyway. Minho laughed. Why would I agree to that when I have 30 guns pointed at your head? Because, Sujin said, my men spent the last hour planting C4 on every support pillar of this building while we walked up here. If you kill me, you kill everyone, including yourself. The room went still. You're bluffing, Minho said. Am I? Sujin pulled out a detonator. I learned from the best, Uncle. You taught me that if you're going to lose, you take your enemies with you. Minho's face went pale. He looked at his guards, at Sujin, at the detonator. You wouldn't, he said. You wouldn't kill your own men. The men in this room chose you over honor, Sujin said quietly. They knew about the organ harvesting. They knew about the trafficking. They chose to follow a monster. So yes, Uncle. I would. Tracy's heart hammered. She didn't know if Sujin was bluffing or not. She hoped he was, prayed he was, but the look in his eyes said maybe he wasn't. However, Sujin continued, I'm willing to offer mercy. You confess to the federal agents waiting in the lobby. You tell them everything. The trafficking, the organ harvesting, the money laundering. You implicate yourself and only yourself. In exchange, I don't detonate this building. And my men? They get a choice. Confess and cooperate, or go down with you. Minho was silent for a long moment. Then he started laughing. It was an ugly sound, full of bitterness and rage. You think you've won? He said. You think because you destroyed one ship and saved some victims that you're a hero now. But you're still my nephew, still a killer, still the dragon. Changing sides doesn't change what you are. Maybe not, Sujin agreed. But it changes what I do next. He looked at Tracy. She understood immediately. She pulled out the laptop, opened it, ran the kill switch. The effect was instantaneous. Every computer in the building started dying. Financial databases corrupted. Encrypted files erased. The entire digital infrastructure of the Hanel Syndicate collapsed in seconds. Minho's face went from pale to purple. What did you do? Destroyed everything, Tracy said. Every account, every record, every piece of evidence you could have used to rebuild. It's gone. You... Minho lunged for her. Sujin was faster. He caught his uncle mid-stride and threw him to the ground. They grappled, rolling across the marble floor. Minho was older but vicious, fighting with the desperate strength of a man who'd lost everything. Sujin got his hands around Minho's throat. It's over, Uncle. Never. The elevator dinged. Federal agents poured into the room. 20 of them, vests marked FBI, weapons drawn. Everyone on the ground, now. The guards dropped their weapons. Sujin released Minho and raised his hands. Tracy set down the laptop and did the same. An agent approached Sujin. Song Sujin? Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of... I know what the charges are, Sujin interrupted. And I'm here to cut a deal. I give you everything. The entire syndicate. Every name. Every operation. Every dirty dollar. In exchange, I want immunity and witness protection for myself and everyone who cooperates. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, studied him. That's a hell of an offer. It's a hell of a case. Trafficking, organ harvesting, money laundering across 7 countries, and I can give you all of it. Sujin gestured to Minho, still on the floor. Starting with the man who planned to harvest organs from kidnapped victims and sell them worldwide. Minho spat blood. You're a traitor. No, Sujin said quietly. I'm done. The agents arrested Minho first, then Sujin, then the guards who'd stood by while innocents were caged. Tracy stood by the window and watched the city. The rain was finally stopping. Sunlight broke through the clouds, turning the wet streets gold. An agent approached her. Tracy Smith? Yes. We're going to need your statement. I have more than that. Tracy picked up the laptop. I fried their servers, but I kept an isolated backup on this drive. It has every financial record, every email, every piece of evidence you'll need to prosecute not just Minho, but his buyers, his accomplices, his entire network. The agent's eyebrows rose. You're cooperating? On one condition. The people we saved from the Pacific Dawn. They get victim status, protected identities, medical care, everything they need to rebuild their lives. Done. Tracy nodded. She looked at Sujin. He was in handcuffs, surrounded by agents, but his eyes were on her. She mouthed, Thank you. He smiled. A real smile. The first truly genuine one she'd seen. Then they took him away. 6 months later, Tracy walked into a federal visitation facility in Oregon. She'd been here before, twice a month since the trial ended, since Minho got life in prison and Sujin got immunity and witness protection in exchange for testifying against everyone. The Hanel Syndicate was dead, 37 members indicted, hundreds of victims rescued, billions in assets seized. And Tracy Smith, former Stanford student, former waitress, was now working for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, hunting down trafficking operations. She'd found her purpose in the ashes. The visitation room was sparse. A table, 2 chairs, a guard in the corner. Sujin entered from the other side. He wore civilian clothes now, no tattoos visible. His hair was different, shorter, lighter. They'd changed everything about him for the protection program, but his eyes were still the same. "Tracy," he said. "Michael." She used his new name, the one the government had given him, the one that came with a second chance. They sat across from each other. The rules said no touching, so they just looked. "How's the new job?" Sujin asked. "Good. We shut down 3 operations last month, saved 42 people. You're making a difference." "We made a difference." Tracy leaned forward. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You saved 38 lives before you ever met me. I saved them with information you gave me access to. With money you helped me steal. With courage you—" She stopped, started again. "We did this together." Sujin's smile was sad. "I'm glad you came. I'll always come." They talked for an hour about nothing and everything. About her work. About his new life in a small town in Montana where no one knew who he'd been. About the therapy they were both in. About healing. When the guard said time was up, Tracy stood slowly. "Same time next month?" she asked. "I'll be here." Tracy turned to go. Then she stopped. "Sujin, Michael, wait." He looked back. "When this is all over, when you're really free and I've finished what we started." Tracy took a breath. "You owe me a date. A real one. Not in a prison. Not through glass." Sujin's smile could have lit the world. "Is that a promise?" "It's a fact. And you know I'm good with facts. Then I'll be counting the days." Tracy left the facility and walked out into the Oregon sunshine. The sky was impossibly blue. The air tasted like pine and possibility. She pulled out her phone and checked her email. 3 new cases waiting for her attention. 3 more chances to save lives. Tracy Smith, the girl who'd lost everything, had found a way to build something better from the ruins. And in a small town in Montana, a man who'd been a dragon was learning to be human. The war was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere in the future, when the world had forgiven them both, there would be a date. Tracy smiled and started walking toward whatever came next. If you made it this far, you know this wasn't just a romance. It was a revolution. This is what happens when the invisible girl becomes the only thing a warlord can see. "When I Love You" looks like burning down a billion-dollar empire just to keep a promise. Hit that like if Tracy's courage and Sujin's sacrifice left you breathless. Subscribe because you need more stories where the underdog takes the crown. And drop a comment telling me, would you have pulled the trigger? Because in this world, love isn't safe. It's survival. And honey, Happy New Year. Leave the safe choices in the past. This year, we're manifesting the kind of passion that shakes the ground you walk on. Don't settle for boring when you were built for a storm. Welcome to Ari Love Stories, where the best happy endings are the ones you have to bleed for.